It's Real and Raw with Lynn Serrano, and you are?
I'm Brian.
There you go. Hey, I'm freaking cold, man. I'm like, I don't know what happened, but my car wouldn't start, so I couldn't take my granddaughter to school. Maybe because it's cold outside.
Maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, so how are you? Hey, what do you think of that show yesterday, man?
I liked it. Chris is a
I
cool
mean,
dude. Christopher's a cool guy.
I know that would even be really cool if you get to actually meet him in person, huh?
Yeah, it'd be all right.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. I thought it was really cool that he was there. So after we talked about that whole thing about moving forward with relationship status, people are like, okay, so we met them, we like them, we kind of trust them, we might even be in love with them, you know. Hi, Sandy. Thanks for being
Sandy,
here.
thanks for being here.
So we have all that in place, but then you get a relationship status, and people start getting comfortable or uncomfortable or
Yep.
some stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you know relationships are work like all the time, not just at the beginning or at the end. I mean, they're just work all the time if you want to keep running, right? So
Yeah.
I figured, why not talk about relationships of what does it healthy communication look like, in the sense that, so you respected each other and you know the boundaries and all that, but then you know like they say, people don't fart in the first few days of the conversation and stuff, but if you start getting really comfortable, that stuff just happens when it happens. I
Well, yeah, you're past the honeymoon phase, you know?
right, so I mean, so a healthy relationship thing is like being around somebody that actually, when you're talking to them and you're trying to say, hey, I don't like this, and that it's going to turn into a fight. I mean, you gotta figure out where your relationship style for those hard conversations are going to come, and how are you going to handle them.
So
So
let's break this down into like we'll volley back and forth of like different things that healthy communication looks like. So I'll go first. Is pillow talk. So be thinking of yours, Lynn, and we'll just volley back and forth, and obviously take input from all of our loyal viewers, and like Sandra and Tracy and Heather, if she's available to make it, and for everybody that catches the replay, we're honored and grateful to have you here. Is pillow talk. After the whole day is done and you're in a relaxed state, right before you go to bed, it's a practice like anything. You have to do it consistently if you're going to get the value out of it. But I found that with my girlfriend, when we practice, the pillow talk, it's just great to reflect on the day, things that we overcame, and possibly have blind spots revealed to us that, the things that we struggled on, but due to hanging in there and moving past it mentally, we were able to overcome it, and I find that that's a very healthy thing to do, to keep on the same page as your partner. So Julia, thanks for being here. So my first one would be the pillow talk at the end of the day. Healthy communication or relationship with an intimate partner would be the pillow talk at night. Right before you're ready to go off to bed, you allocate a few minutes. It's the quality of the time. It's when you're exhausted, you're wiped out, but you make a few extra moments to communicate and replay the day.
shit, Brian, that's what's been problem with all my relationships. I never knew about freaking pillow talk.
No. I'm not saying it's going to be in any like relationship book or whatever, but it's something that, instead of going to bed, just going to bed, I think that where you kind of summarize the day. And if somebody was in a little bit of a funk, or, like for me, with my anxiety and my depression, is that, when I look at all the stuff, to get done, I'm trying to grapple with that, and, enjoy a vacation, be on the show with you. And it's not easy to do. And right before going live, I just got overwhelmed. My anxiety was firing just because I got all this stuff done, and it, or I got to do all this stuff, and it doesn't seem like I can move forward with any of it. So,
Oh, well, I thank you for being really vulnerable with us that way.
mhm.
I know that our viewers like Sandy and Jules that are here, we appreciate you showing up because we do have good
Yeah.
chemistry and we do have fun here in this hour. But I do see that the way you're structured, that you're totally out of your comfort zone, and that I think you're doing really well for showing up, and
I
that's
mean,
half the battle.
it doesn't, I love being I love being uncomfortable, and because that's where you grow, that's where you get better, that's where you keep pushing the needle along in life. And, that's something that as a performer and as a person that's always in motion is that you always have to keep pursuing that bar. And it's not like it's on a map, but it's internally like how far, how much do I want to be uncomfortable? Kind of
Right,
like somebody that gets on an improv stage for the first time. They're going to be very uncomfortable because it's an atmosphere and an environment that's all new to them. Well, that's my stage. And so it's like, okay, for me to keep pushing, becomes second nature after a while. But that's where I know I need to be, because that's where growth happens. That's where development happens. And that's where you can, through the course of time, you look back at the way you used to be and you're like, holy crap, by doubling down on yourself and moving forward and getting rid of all the noise and distractions, you find out not only where you need to be, but what's most important to you. And you let everything else go. It doesn't mean it's not valuable. It just doesn't mean that it's not your thing. It's not where you need to be.
right.
So,
Well, again, that's really cool that you're sharing that, and that because everybody needs to know that it's a process for all of us to get by,
mhm.
and not just get by, but conquering those things that are holding you back. So
And plus, I mean, the too many people are vulnerable to what other people think about what their life looks like. It shouldn't matter. You know what I mean? Because your life is your life, and as long as it makes sense to you and it's where your heart tells you to go and where your gut tells you where you need to be, that's all that should matter. You shouldn't have to run it through the ringer of all these people that are not living your life, you
yeah,
know? And I think a lot of people, thank you for being here, Peter, is too many people look for justification of others for how they should live their life. And it's like, that's one of the worst things you can do. One of the worst
right,
things you can do,
right,
because they're not paying your bills. They're not dealing with what you have going on. And, like we've talked about this in another context, where living up in the stands versus being on the court. And I'll be damned if anybody's going to live up on the stands telling me how I should live my life when they're not in here. They're not in
right,
my heart. It
right.
doesn't make any sense where people don't even live their own life, even though their heart is beating and they have their own mind to do what they want with it. They're really not there. They're on autopilot, or they're vulnerable to everybody else's opinions because they don't have any of their own, or they want to try to fit in with other people.
So,
And yeah,
So let me ask you this.
yeah.
Not trying to be personal, but we do get real and raw here.
Hmm.
So let me ask you, what have you learned from the last relationship as far as communication skills and what you do here? You're more you're probably more ready to like deal with things like right now as opposed to did later. I mean, what are your two different communication styles in your
Sure.
relationship?
Number one is that I'm only going to be myself, right? I'm only going to be myself. My self-expression, it matters to me as much as integrity does. Where if I commit to something, my word is my bond, right? And that's all I have. My self-expression is me. I'm not. I'm done. I learned a very valuable lesson by going through the previous relationship where I lost my self-expression, and it took me, still going on right now, years later, a couple years later, and I'm still working on my self-expression. I mean, it's probably a lifelong journey, right? But getting back to where I really don't care what other people think about me, and I'm not there to cater. I'm not gonna. If people don't like me for who I am, there's nothing more I can be for them, and I'm not going to be a fake version of somebody else, right? So self-expression is number one. Number two is that, always, if there's always having conversations about how are we doing, right? That if anything, if there's upsetting or anything that goes on, that it's always dealt with in the matter, right? It's not gone days upon end, right? If there's something that bothered, my partner or I, We try to flush it out as soon as possible, because then we don't bring in the meaning of things and a whole realm of other things that may or may not have anything to do with it. Okay. Another one is distance. We're a lot closer. I mean, I would drive 3 hours one way, when I lived in Illinois. Now it's like an hour away, so obviously distance is a huge thing too. When you miss somebody and you want them to be there and all of that. Other things is that just the affection you show for each other, going on walks together, right? Building somebody up, for me, this is what, I don't know, day number 382 or 83 in a row or something. Working on my second straight year of walking 2 to 4 miles a day. And, my girlfriend, she wants to get back into walking again. And today we went on our walk, and, you could definitely tell when I had to slow down a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I wanted to make sure that she was okay. I have a longer stride and I've been doing it longer, and she took some time off, and there's nothing wrong there, but you build each other up, and, so those are just a few of them. I mean, I could go in a lot deeper. But there's, and then Julie says, when it comes to people's opinions that I don't know or care about, mind over matter, it's my mind and your opinion. Yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm deliberately going out and, telling people that you need to, my opinion is golden or it applies to everybody. It's just mine. And I'll be danged if I'm going to have somebody tell me that my opinion doesn't matter because it's my own. Right. But obviously when it comes to those kinds of situations, if you state your opinion and somebody just wants to walk all over it, it might be not the best audience to be around, So, but I mean, the more open it can be, the better, regardless of what it is. Right. Like today, just before we went live, my partner's like, "Hey, I want to spend some pool time with you." And I'm like, "Absolutely. We're going to do that before I leave in 6 days, cause she's here for an extra week." So those types of things, gotta prepare for and make sure it happens to fulfill upon my commitment.
You're such a good boyfriend. If only other guys would be so educated, the world would be a way better place. Anyways, it's just,
Yeah.
but like I said, sometimes you gotta have breakdowns to have breakthroughs,
Yep.
and you're having breakthroughs by being mindful of a relationship. And my sister-in-law says my meaning to that of having boundaries. Yep.
I think that in my, hey, let's rock
Hi,
it. You betcha,
Jerry.
Jerry. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I love it. So,
I
boy, we
just
should
think
have
that,
him come on our show and talk about communication relationships, because him and his wife do great. But they're also self-development people that know how to have great relationships, and that's just it. People don't communicate, or the languages, or anything. I mean, like the world would be a better place if we could respect communication in a safe, healthy way.
right. So what's one thing for you that healthy communication looks like? What's one thing for you?
Is to know that when I'm talking to somebody, that you know, in a relationship, if I do happen to have a trigger from my past, it doesn't defy my relationship now, but they've got to understand that I'm going to bring up a conversation of something that might be triggering, and let's work it out so that we can minimize the trigger, or something that's just not healthy for me, because I don't allow that in my world.
Okay.
And so if I tell you the triggers to begin with, and you happen to do a trigger, we're going to have to communicate about it.
Right.
But don't take that trigger of me telling you we need to have a talk, because like I said, we're comfortable now.
Mhm.
Don't do something that's just inappropriate, that's going to trigger me something, because then you turn it around that, oh, well, don't define me from your past relationships. But again, you've got to realize that in communication, when somebody doesn't want it, I'm not trying to put everything out here, but I'm just thinking of different examples of when certain things, certain demeanors of being approached don't work, and that, and you don't that person doesn't choose to respect that boundary or that way, and they bring it up to you, you got to realize it's what you're doing is what we're talking about, not past relationships. We're talking about right in the moment. What you're doing, I I don't deal well with.
Now, in your
And so
opinion,
the
do you feel that now in your opinion, do you feel like they just don't understand, or it hasn't been communicated, or they're doing it subconsciously, that they're doing it just to toy with you when they hit
well,
one of those hot
right,
buttons?
and that is a good point. That is a good point because I think for them, they don't seem to understand the severity of the situation or
Well,
the respect of it.
my thought would even be, has it ever been communicated that those are even hot buttons for you?
They were. And so then when it's disrespected, it's because they get so laxed.
Now,
And
have they told you that they understood that those are your hot buttons, or are you assuming that?
no, they told me that. And then when they,
Okay.
but then as time goes by, then when it's done, you got to say, hey, and you shouldn't feel in a relationship that you can't readdress something that, because, we could flub up, like, I mean, we could flub up in a situation. And so then you're like, oh, shoot, I forgot that that's on the list of 500. Ha ha ha. You know, and you could talk it up. But when you're talking about the conversation, can you not just like gingerly like bring it up instead of saying, hey, that annoys me? Approach it in a healthy way to say, hey,
Well, but
that's
but but here's the thing: is that the way that you want them to do it, that's not possible because they're not you. They have to
well,
approach it in the best way they know how, or the best way they're instructed to do that. But you can't screw with their DNA. Their DNA is how they're wired to be,
right.
and expecting them to do something without direction is not going to work.
No, and there was direction, but I'm just saying it's a discord of disrespect, and talking about the disrespect communication or in a communicable way where it says, look, remember, that's not, that's just not it. And then to be able to not go from reminding that, and it's something that could be minute from like, your relationship for a few years and nothing's happened in those years, but then all of a sudden it comes up and you say, hey, remember, I don't, whatever, and say, oh yeah, okay, I'm sorry, and let it go, right?
Right.
I mean, in a healthy, but if they turn it around to think, well, what do you mean? And I'm not that person or this or that and blah, blah, blah. Instead of saying, hey, I'm just bringing it up that, I don't appreciate that. When they turn it around to be about them and not you, it's difficult to fix those. And that's not a healthy relationship thing.
Or when they make it defensive,
Well, that's what I mean.
or when they get defensive about, like we talked about with Christopher yesterday, the distinction between a conversation and an argument. You know what I
Right.
mean? When you're just clearing the air about something, or if you felt a certain way, or somebody said to you, I don't like how you treated me there, that's a conversation. That's
Right.
something that you can complete right away and say what there is to say and move on. But when something's been escalated to an argument, it's probably not one occurrence. It's probably a built up of occurrences where there's feelings involved, and feelings that are involved in each one of them, but they're unrecognized, right?
Right.
Or they're not noticed. So then just that, how that person made you feel in that moment, number one, wasn't communicated. Number two is that you're still feeling you're feeling in a certain way.
Well, it does come to the fact that we've said in the past, without the right communication or respect or trust to begin with, you're going to have these freaking problems over and over.
Well,
That's my point right now.
even establishing a communication regardless. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like even a style, however two people are attracted and whatever communication method works best for them. If it's just willy-nilly, or if one person is doing it all, or you you don't really have one.
Right.
you know, how do you
Right.
know
And
if you're coming or going if it hasn't been established?
so let's go. That being said, let's go to what Jerry said here. And then the next
Communication,
one.
a skill that one has to absolutely.
Exactly. Because it
And
compiles.
that's not only one person. That's also, like, not only is there communication for us to other people, but also though for others to us, and taking ownership of that communication, no matter what group it is.
Right.
Right.
And what happens is it just compiles, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have a true problem there. So he goes,
That's very important. and how we use them and to prevent the hot buttons that are more and more of an issue in today's world. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you, Jerry, for that feedback and input. And yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And it does become such a surmountable amount of stuff that can add up really fast if it's not taken care of as you go by, and to remember to respect that person that's there. Sorry, Tank's acting up over here.
It's okay. So what's the next one for you?
The next one for me for a healthy relationship is
healthy communication.
Communication is a daily checking in on seeing how things are going is definitely important because it wasn't priority in the past. So
what does that look like then? Give me an example of what that looks like.
Like if you were to okay, a good example would be like being an introvert is one thing to have my space, but it's another thing that when I'm with somebody that's, whoever they are, I don't like to pursue, I would prefer that they let me know, hey, I'm thinking of you or whatever. And then in other words, I'm not codependent in the sense that I have to feel like I have to reach out first, like I respect their space and stuff like that. So when they communicate, hey, I got time to talk right now, then I'll yak away because that's the time allotted, So communication and knowing what time of day is good to talk, or when's not a good time to talk, because obviously if you're busy and you're sidetracked, the communication tempo, because you're gonna misconstrue the yeah. So anyways, you get my point, I think.
Well, I mean, because the thing about it is that we can have it be conceptual, but the more personal it can be, it's an actual example that happened in the past versus creating something, right? And the more direct it can be, the better it is because it's your life, right? Like, so what does that checking in look like for you, on the day to day? Not something that you have to create newly, but something that was there in the past, right?
Absolutely. We got Tom in the house, and then I think Tom. Jules wrote a big thing to us here. So
our integrity, communication with others expands. I think that I would agree with you, Tom, but I would also disagree, because our integrity to ourselves and communication with others can only go so far unless it's reciprocated and respected, right? We can have integrity and we can communicate with others, but if we're not around people that are receptive to that, it's only going to go so far, because if we have integrity with our word and our communication, but they don't, it's only going to go so far.
I agree with that. Okay, here we go. So she said she meant men and women, so whatever correction that is.
Men and women wired so different, and I truly believe a lot of women continue to bring their past relationships into a new one. Sometimes women need to know when not to speak. I always say, pause your thoughts for a day, and if you still bothers you, then have open communication about it. More time when time passes, the feelings, and see that it's a good insight, but it's also not fair to other people in the future that they have to deal with that. It's one thing to understand it. It's another thing to be open about it, but it's not, that should not have to be dealt with by other people, in my
opinion. Right. Absolutely. And I mean, Tom agreed.
Yeah. I mean, we can have all the integrity in the world and communicate and keep working on that, but that doesn't mean that that's everybody's agenda, Right. Unfortunately.
Right. But, again, it comes with people being seasoned, and, unfortunately, divorce is so so
Well,
high.
and I think that it'd be hard for me to believe that somebody that you consider a friend or more, or somebody that you're in a relationship, regardless of how deep it is, or if it's personal or business, is that you probably wouldn't be around people that didn't have the qualities or the level of communication or integrity that you have, right? It might not be the
Exactly.
same, but you're probably not going to hang around a lot of people that have no integrity. or
And,
or they're very bad at communicating. Doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that you're probably going to you might interact with them, but it might not be something that you would do on a very regular basis.
and that's the point right there we need to drive right through is if you find that this is what's happening perpetually, that's not the person for you.
Right.
I mean, trying to make relationships work, that there's friction, not a easy um, flow with you. It so many relationships shouldn't even be because they have this problem of not communicating, not seeing things, and thinking, "Oh shit, I'll let that go. I'll let that go."
Right.
It just, so many toxic stuff. I mean, it's sad to me. I mean, like I've been in those relationships. I mean, I'm at fault here. I know that. And I'll be damned if I really wish I would have articulated. And I mean, being an introvert's one thing, but it's another thing that and I've forgiven myself. But honestly, staying in things for too long is detrimental
Well,
to
well, but
your,
it's detrimental, but also though, how much do you want to look back as opposed to look forward,
Well,
right?
right, but and I've lived and learned, trust me. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that we spend too much time in the wrong situation, and
Oh, yeah. I know.
and I'm just talking about just in general communicating with people, whether it's in business, whether it is personal, whether it's family, whether whatever. I'm talking as a whole, communication.
Yeah. Well,
So,
yeah, there's I remember in a previous relationship where it was like it's towards the end, and I'm like, let's go, let's have a date night, right? And it was a last ditch effort. I hate to say it, but it really was, and it really wasn't received very well. It was like I felt like I was doing an enormous amount of work, and the other person really didn't give a shit. They didn't really care, and you know it was a last ditch effort. I get that, but just to, pick out the place, be willing to drive, it just these things. I mean, to try to keep something going, um, you know, it's you can only hit the like if we're thinking about, playing tennis, right? If you volley the ball over back to somebody and they don't hit it back, there's only so many times you're going to do that before you notice and realize that something's going on here. And whether it's through their actions or their words or uh, how they treat you or how they make you feel, whatever it is. I mean, even like I love to give flowers. I love to write out cards. I love to do those kinds of little things without being prompted. It's just something I do. And I remember after a while, it just felt like, these weren't being, it was just something to be expected instead of something to be grateful for. And it lost its merit. It lost its feel. It didn't, and I'm not asking for like big hugs or anything, but it's like it makes me feel good to give to somebody else. But then when it doesn't even seem like it's acknowledged or it's downplayed that the bouquet of flowers wasn't good enough or big enough or the right flowers, that just really puts a bad taste in my mouth.
absolutely. I mean, that's just it's not received. And find the right person that loves the language you like to give at that level and whatnot. But let's talk about the fact that the body language and the not talking. I mean, like people don't realize that if you avoid having the hard conversations
Yep.
and you're just avoiding them by being busy
Yep.
in doing something else, that's just as worse. I mean, because that person's thinking, oh shit, it might be this, it might be that. I mean, you're making you're making your case even harder because they're assuming shit that might not even be, that might manifest because you didn't take the time to actually check in with that person. And
Yeah.
there's so much of that shit going on
Well,
too.
well, and like I remember being, there was only so amount of time, so much time that I had with my ex, like because she was gone all day working, and then all of a sudden it would be like, okay, there might have been like a 3 hour window, right, all day that I actually had a chance to hang out with her, have dinner, catch up on the day, that kind of thing, before I'd be heading off to bed, and then she would be working on some other side hustle businesses, right, and as I look back now, having your phone at the table would not be allowed. Like there was several times when like I made dinner, she gets home, she sets her bags down, dinner's ready, and she's already on her phone. And I asked her several times, I'm like, can you just please put that away? And it was almost like she was offended by me telling her to put her phone away. And that right there is non-negotiable for me anymore. Where it's like, really, no matter how busy you are, what's a priority to you? Your phone or to spend some quality time with your partner? You know, it's so sad. I've seen couples. Julie said, "It's so sad. I have seen couples treat and give more respect and patience to total strangers than to their partner." Absolutely, and I and to make it to go a little bit deeper is that we actually broke up at a therapy session because she couldn't. At least my thought is she couldn't tell me when we were at home. She had to do it in front of somebody else, which I it seems kind of cowardly to me. But teach their own, you know. Um, but
De- definitely not a healthy situation. And I mean, we're going into Valentine's Day, people. Don't make the mistake of falling and getting into a relationship because you think, oh, that diamond ring looks nice. Your life ain't gonna look nice though. I hate to say it.
I mean, let's see here, Tom. The gift of giving without expectation is a gift. Continue to give without expectation and gratitude will fill the universal law and will come back. Yeah, in ways unexpected. Number one, it has to feel right. But I do have to say this is that, there comes a moment in time, without knowing when it is, but when your gut and your heart tells you that this doesn't fulfill me anymore, where I'm giving, right? And it's just like it seems like there's something not right about it, right? I mean, it's not like you're looking for a compliment or accolades, but if you give and give and give, and it doesn't seem like there's any reciprocity, or how you feel about it goes away, let's go with that, right? So it's all internal. If you feel like inside of your heart that this no longer gives you fulfillment to give somebody, your time or go out to dinner or whatever it is, how does that change? And it's a true way of looking at how you feel as a guide of what that looks like, in a relationship, because your heart doesn't lie, right? If something is denied or disregarded, it doesn't take long for that to happen, for you to wake up and be like, whoa, okay, this is different now. What is missing, right? Are we not where we are? Are we not as deep in a relationship? Do we not communicate as well? What is that? And if you're not upfront about, hey, there's something going on, I don't know what it is, but we need to flush this out. That right there, taking a stand, is a lot better than just letting it go and waiting for the other person to bring it up.
Absolutely. And people are they're not taking their relationships seriously whatsoever. And it's a sad thing. It's like not top priority, and it does ruin relationships. I mean, and and I've been guilty of being that, like that.
Well, and plus, I mean, what is that void in their life? Is that void because they want somebody or they need somebody? There's a distinction there, right? If you want to be with somebody, that's for the right reasons. If you need somebody, there's a gaping hole inside of somebody somewhere that needing, no. That no. If you want to be with somebody, you've carved out a space for them to show up in that capacity. But needing somebody, that means you're trying to fill a void from something that's not complete in your life, whatever that might be. And yeah, I learned that from one of my exes, that it's like, she said to me, she goes, I want you, I don't need you. And I'm like, wow, good distinction, right? So it's and it's like, are you with that person for the right reasons, right? Do do you see a future with that person, or is it some other, um, is there some other motivation for being there, right? Is it because they have something you want, or they're around the right crowd, or they have a social status you want to be involved in, or maybe their financial, whatever it is. It's like, man, there's so many reasons why people get together, but also though, how many of them stay together, right? Um, you know, are you with them because you want to be with them, or is there some ulterior motive?
Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, or you got situations where people think that they want to take care of you, and you don't need to be taken care of. You're taking care of yourself.
Right.
I just
I witnessed a scenario that, when I lived down on the outskirts of Chicago, is that after a while, I didn't really realize it, but it felt like I was a babysitter to my ex's dogs. I love the dogs with all my heart, because I love dogs, right? I mean, taking them outside, caring for them when she was at work. But eventually it was like, whoa, until we were done and over with, I look back on it, I'm like, wow, it felt like I was a dog sitter, right? Uh,
wow, that's a
and
sucky feeling.
I hate to say that, but I love the dogs, so that was my filter. That, like, I was blinded by that because I love the dogs. I'd do anything for them, right? But after looking at it from a distance, it's like, whoa, what else was there? You know what I mean? Like, what was that, the comfortable piece when she'd be gone for weekends working at a time, that I look after the dogs without question. I'll be there for them, so she wouldn't have to kennel them up and whatnot. And it's like, to save her money, right? And it's just those things that I thought that was valuable, to help and to uh, create a relationship. But in essence, I don't ever recall ever getting a thank you, or, hey, thanks for watching the dogs, or whatever. It just seemed like it was expected. Versus, we weren't married. I moved in, but they're not my dogs, you know. Um, so, you know,
Yeah,
it can get really murky looking at that, because I love dogs and I would do anything for them. But the fact is like, they're not mine, right? I loved them as if they were mine, but still, the fact is that there was nothing binding me together to take care of them, right? I did it. That was a part of a relationship, right? If somebody has pets, you're either open to having that a part of your life or not, just like children or something. It's not like, well, I love everything about you, but I'm not really the kid person. Well, no, it's a package deal, So,
yeah. It's a hard call when you have feelings into the situation,
absolutely.
and you're realizing that, you know, again, it's what you're going to put up with in a relationship and what you're
Well,
not.
and it's like the lengths that you're going to go to try to keep something going. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, when you're in it, you're not thinking about this because you're trying to keep it going and you love that person. Maybe you're in denial that it's like, wow, we're not. I don't know how to fix this, or I don't know how to correct this because I don't have the tools. Right? A situation like this may have never happened to me in life, so therefore, I don't know how to deal with it.
Right.
And so, but looking at it after the fact, I see big gaping holes where, like, it's just so much easier to agree and not say anything than it is to speak up and not try to cross friction, but set boundaries, as Julie said, which is a good
Yeah.
thing in my opinion.
Yeah. I've been there, done that rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, you can only buy so many cars and know how many options are out there. And after a while, you're like, shit, how am I going to put all these options in the new and last package?
Can I
That's
take
where I'm at.
those? Can I take those two options with those three, and can we combine those? Is that okay? Is that okay?
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm at in life. Exactly.
I mean, that might work in cars, but maybe not in men.
Well, you know,
I like
well,
his blonde hair and his physique with his smile and his butt.
oh, I don't give a
Okay,
shit
come
about
on.
all that as much
Oh,
as
okay.
it's just no, as much as being on time and yeah, I gotta have great sex, but
Yeah.
whatever.
That was a that. Speaking of that, right there was yeah. That's well, you're touching on a lot of things that are just top of mind. Lynn is one of my exes, like she was made, she would say that, she's a great woman, very educated and whatnot. I don't want anybody to think ill of her. Just it didn't work. She's been very successful and whatnot. She worked very hard for what she has and all of her training and education. But it was like, it was okay for her to be late. It was almost like laughter, where it's like, well, I'm always late. Okay, so that's like somebody that considers themselves an a-hole. Like, number one, if you laugh about saying that you're that about yourself, there's a problem there. Number two is, why would you want to stay there, right? Why do you just settle that I'm always late to everything? Well, that's not attractive, right? If you're always late, I mean, and you're not willing to do anything about it, maybe leave early or set another alarm. To me, that just kind of like, I don't want to take ownership of being on time. That's just me. And it's like, no, that doesn't work for me. Where I'm always late. Well, okay, you can change that.
No shit.
You can change that, but
Yeah.
you have to make a concerted effort, and you got to do it day by day.
But that's on the top of my list, man. That is like, I'm an anal about that.
I mean, and let me give you a real concrete example. Is that we were supposed to go out to a dinner in my hometown with my mom, and it was like an hour away, something like that, from her secondary home. And so I just called her up and I said, I texted her. I said, hey, I just wanted to see if you're on your way or whatever. And she blasted me, like literally, like just unleashed at me to be like, what are you saying? I'm late? And it got very like filled with friction real quick. And I'm like, wow, my intention was just to make sure that you're on your way and we're all good to go. Right. It wasn't to cause a fight or anything. And yeah, that should have gave me a
It should have been your sign.
It should have been one of my signs to be like, wow, I'm just making sure that you're on your way and all of that, because I don't recall if she's ever been to the place before. So it's like, to make sure we're all on time and we all eat together. I mean, just common courtesy type stuff, but it wasn't perceived that way. And yeah, those kinds of things are just, they become non-negotiable, but also though it's like, that's just me. I'm always late to things, and just to not like, there's a guy that I know in one of my masterminds, and he says that he's an a-hole. Like, he goes, I'm an a-hole. And I'm like, wow. Number one, for somebody to say that about themselves, that's a little bit weird. Number two is, why would you want to be that? Why would you want to be labeled as that, or to continue to walk through life like that? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, where I'm an a-hole and I'm proud of it. So you're saying that you can't work on that, or you can't improve that, or you can't move away from that. It's not a badge of honor. Let's just put it that way.
It's a grade of a human that I choose not to be around personally.
Correct. And then also though, to add a little bit on top of it, is that this person will challenge other people, but then when you challenge him, he doesn't allow it.
Hey, I've been married to those.
Yeah.
I found that was my radar before for those. So yeah, it truly is. So that's why you should think of what you want and not what you don't want.
Correct. Well, and in my opinion, I think that everybody should do this, about deal breakers, what are mandatory things, or what are non-negotiables in relationships. If you have not done that exercise and you're looking for somebody in the dating scene and whatnot, I highly recommend it, because you're going to save a lot of time. Plus, you're also going to become clear about what you want, and you're not going to settle for less. One of my good friends, Rick, who I've known for many years, we've coached together, we've trained together, we've done workshops, we've helped each other out doing events. He's retired now. He's seen me at my worst. I've seen him at his worst. And after my relationship ended, when I lived down in Illinois, he was there every step of the way throughout the nearly 4 years. He's heard it all. And he told me, he goes, Brian, he was straight up and honest with me, real and raw. That's exactly it was with me, because I wanted to hear it. Right. And if I'm going to go through this heartbreaking experience, I want to do it once. I don't want to do it many times. And I want to learn things along the way. And what he said to me is that he goes, Brian, everything throughout that relationship was you telling me about how you wanted to please her. None of it was ever about what you wanted out of the relationship, or what are things that you have to have, right? That make you fulfilled.
It's funny. That reminds me of offense and defense. You were on, you're on the one
Yep.
side, and how are you going to play a game? Because you obviously couldn't be on yours in that court. Yeah.
And so what he did was he goes, Brian, take some time, however long it takes, to define exactly what you want in a woman, what she looks like, your non-negotiables, and it's like are you are entitled to get what you want out of a relationship. He goes, you are. You have a lot to offer. What you give should come back to you as well, right? It shouldn't just be giving and then you get nothing in return, right? And it took me a while to understand that. But then also, though, to declare what kind of woman I wanted or what I was looking for, the things that are must-haves, non-negotiables, and deal breakers, right? And so it's a huge exercise. It's a huge thing, but I would rather do something like that once in full detail and then maybe add like little residual notes or something like that, so I can be clear for myself about the person when they show up, that this person matches up with who I want to be with, instead of not being very clear. And then you get very confused and you waste time on somebody that is never going to turn into who you should be with and who you want to be with. It's a huge exercise, but let me tell you what, it makes a huge difference, because when you can be clear and you're able to say to somebody, I don't think this is going to work. You're not wasting their time. You're not wasting your time, and you're taking ownership of that, right? And I think that that's a very humbling thing to do versus trying to blend something together that isn't going to work, or you're going to have to overcome a lot of obstacles to even make it just neutral, right? When you don't have to do that, it's kind of like back in the day. Like Steve Jobs, as hard as he was as a boss, one of the co-CEOs or the founders of Apple, is that he only hired A type people, right? He didn't hire B type of people, because the A type of people don't want to work with the B type of people, and vice versa. It's the same thing as in a business environment. When somebody says, "Man, how do you get so many happy employees?" Well, they show up happy. They are inherently happy. You don't have to train for that. They just naturally are that way. So,
Yeah.
One other thing too is about healthy communication. I think is very important. Is in the morning, take ownership of something inspirational, a quote about love, a quote about motivation, inspiration, whatever it is. There's lots of resources out on the interwebs, to have a folder on your phone or whatever to pull from, that you can acknowledge your special someone, your partner, when they wake up in their day, or maybe to help them get through the day or whatever their schedule looks like. You just got a reservoir of inspirational pieces that you can pull from and offer as a contribution. And this goes back to never show up empty-handed. You always have something that you can do to enrich your partner's mind and how they feel, and to let you're thinking of them is very healthy as well.
You're so sweet, Brian. You are. I love it. So,
what did Tom have to say? What did Tom have to say?
Oh, he just had to go, and he
Okay.
loves our show. So he said he's
Good.
a great program.
Okay.
For his
Thanks
G-forces.
for being here, Tom.
Yeah, thank you. So, but seriously, it's it just kind of sucks that people go through things, but then it's nice to see when they learn from things. And it sounds like you learned so much from your last relationship, and you're doing a lot better job now. So, like I said, I appreciate that.
Well,
Probably should.
Plus,
Go ahead.
when you remove all the noise and distractions, and if you don't have a solid foundation from the beginning, it's kind of like wanting to go to a 300 level class without doing the the remedial level, right? Or the prerequisites, right? If you don't have a solid foundation first, you can't put the third story on a house of a foundation you don't even have laid, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
but yet that's what people try to do. Yep. That's what people try to do, meet at the bar, say, hey, let's go, let's go have some sex. Oh, that's great. and you can't figure out the rest of the shit. I mean,
Right.
it's not going to work.
No.
Or it's going to work. It's going to work in a way that's just not going to be conducive, or
Right.
definitely, yeah. There's just so much to it that people just don't give any credence to.
What I will say is this, is that healthy communication, whatever works for you by some of the examples that we shared, if they can work for you, great, is that the more you commit to them, always leave others in a place of then you encountered them, the law of increase. Yeah.
Yes,
Leave people better than where, leave people better than where they were before.
absolutely.
Is that, to me, relationships can be simple if you lay the foundation, if you're on the same page about what it is, right? I don't believe, the world at large is simple, but when we get all in here and then we add people to that, that's what makes it complex, right? When
Absolutely.
you're on the same page, or when somebody can read your facial expression to be like there's something going on with you or whatever, you've developed each other from a standpoint. You've developed each other enough to know that there's something not right, and you're not going to get off the hook. The person's going to hold you accountable so they can understand what's up with you. And to me, it doesn't get any more simple than that when you can have conversations, no matter what it is. And at first, it might not be easy, but let me tell you what, though, the long term, if that's what you're after, the long term will help with that. That it's like, wow, because in the moment, it's a conversation. Down the road, it might be a heck of a lot more. And more than likely, the root cause of that is not going to be nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found, unfortunately, because there was a trigger, but then there was a lack of communication, or talking about it, like direct communication. And then it just manifested and built to the point where now we don't even, I know that I'm sad or I'm unhappy, but you don't even know why.
It's compound daily for a
Correct.
reason.
Yep. Absolutely.
Compound daily. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I can be I can be funny and say, "Wow, now I know the reason of compound daily," or or an example of it, I should say. So yeah, we're getting almost done here, Mister.
Yeah. So, what
And
are your final thoughts as we wrap up this episode? What are your final thoughts on healthy communication, or takeaways, or things you want to impart to everybody?
well, final thoughts is if there's something definitely on my top of my list, and not in number order, but top of my list, I see the importance of this communication being truly a key, because that will crumble the rest of the building. It will crumble.
Yep.
You can't, without having good communication skills between you to begin with. And if there's friction and just communicating, I mean, when you communicate doesn't mean you need to agree or that you're going
Correct.
to agree,
Correct.
but your listening skills are a factor as far as everything else. So when you realize that communication is so imperative to the rest of the, everything else rippling to harmony, it's definitely a pillar that's way up on top
Mm-hmm.
of the food chain, people.
Right. Well,
Because
and
without good
well, and
communication, you're not going to have anything.
well, and healthy. Each person is, or each couple, if it's a relationship, is meant to determine what healthy is. Healthy is not meant to be comfortable. Healthy is not meant to be right all the time, or one person sharing everything and one person, the other person not sharing enough. It's about what keeps you guys together,
Right.
right?
The
If
the
that's the whole
ability
intention of it.
the
Yeah.
ability to articulate in
Yeah.
a relationship is so imperative, because without it, you really have no relationship at all.
Correct.
I mean, it just
I mean,
it's going to
I mean,
crumble.
if you're living with somebody and whatnot, and what healthy is not is feeling like a roommate or feeling like it's work. Now, relationships are work, but if they really do feel like work, more likely there's probably a lack of communication or frustration, right? There's some things that are just not jiving, and I believe one of those roots is that you're probably not having regular conversations about what is important, what's not, and just being fully transparent with each other.
Right, like good example. I mean, like, important things to me are like, do you like to cook? They like to cook. Okay, that's a bonus because I don't care to cook.
Yep.
So I mean, like finding what your strengths are, finding out what their strengths are, what's the weakness, and where you can compromise. I mean, and
Yep.
that's just life itself, people. I mean,
Or even just choosing, like,
right.
like one, like when somebody asks, hey, what do you want for dinner? Oh, I don't know what you want to have for dinner. It's like, just
you know,
freaking choose something. You know what I mean?
exactly.
I learned, truth be told, is like, in full transparency, I was, with me and my ex, that's what actually happened, because I didn't want to just decide something, right? And all that, the more that you go without deciding, the more frustrating it gets, because it's not that big of a deal. Just pick something. Do you want Mexican or burgers? What do we want? Let's just order something and have dinner. We don't
Yeah.
need, it's a petty thing in the whole deal,
No shit. No shit. Jules said, yes, healthy mind and soul is essential.
Essential.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's just so many people that don't have either one. You
I
know,
mean, another way I look at healthy communication is a safe haven. For me, it's another way of putting it that resonates well with me, where it's like, no matter what is said here is going to be held in confidence, respect, and you're going to work on it together. It's not something that's going to fall on deaf ears.
absolutely. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's been good to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Valentine's Day is coming, and you know, you might want to consider the fact as far as communicating and not being in the normal, how would you say, oh, I'm going to get this because I like it, or are you going to get it because they like it? Communicate. I mean, is it even worth spending the money or the time?
Well, when it comes to Valentine's Day, obviously, we if we would have to get granular with each particular relationship if it's Valentine's Day,
Yeah,
right? Is it somebody at work? Is it a neighbor down the street? Is it your loved one that you really care about, or somebody you're thinking about getting married to? There's a lot of different contexts, but the one thing in all of that is intention. What is your intention? What's the purpose of Valentine's Day for you and this person? What is it? That is a definition. It's not something, um, that's not something that there's just one answer. Did you
right.
see articulate? Yes. Conversation is a definite plus. Learning to listen and ask those questions. Your significant other can't be a roommate. Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yes, I did say articulate.
and the beautiful part about this, Mark, is that we don't have all the answers. But when somebody chooses not to engage in finding an answer, working something out, that's when there's a red flag, right? Because how can you get to the source of an upset or an obstacle if somebody's unwilling to even engage with it? Because there might be a little friction, or there might be a little sadness or frustration. Well, if it gets buried upon, just like a road that needs to be repaved, right? The reason how the road got that way is because, they repaved it, you drove over it, now they got to repave it again. Well, you can't keep putting band-aids over these issues, especially if feelings are involved. It'll work
Uh,
for a little bit, but it won't work for long term, you
absolutely.
know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a good topic. I think we got a lot out of it. I hope
Yeah.
everybody else did. I hope we
Yep.
gave them food for thought and
Mm-hmm.
some clarity. And let's see, tomorrow's the day before the Friday before the big Valentine's Day weekend. So
Mm-hmm.
we
Yep.
just might want to talk about Valentine's pasts.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Yeah,
Like,
let's do it. Let's just open it up for, ideas or stories,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Let's just keep it open for tomorrow.
yeah, for sure. Take it easy and do Valentine's past and come with the good stories and the bad stories about Valentine's in the past. And so Mark says here, learn to be engaging on a romancing way.
Romancing
That's
way.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
Well,
the biggest word in there is engaging. Is that
yes.
there's people that are engaging in something because it's of importance to each of you. Engagement is not one person doing all the work and the other person not. There has to be some common bond. Engagement is not one person. And engagement is more than one person, right? There has to be a delicate volley back and forth if engagement is going to exist. Remember, Valentine's Day should not define your relationship. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think
Right.
I think that there's a tendency The more that somebody is in full belief of Valentine's Day, the more that they put all their apples into that one day without without looking at February 15th, and then the next day, right? It's like if they plan more for one day than they do the rest of the year, that's a problem. That's a huge problem.
It certainly is. Well, my dog's acting up here,
Yep.
so because I got extra people in the house.
Yep.
My daughter has company.
Yep.
So,
well, thanks everybody for watching. We really appreciate it, and for everybody that catches the replay, we're grateful that you tuned in and hopefully got something out of our discussion on
Mark, you're going to get yourself in trouble for that one. You married man, you. Gee, we ain't going there. This isn't the Jerry Springer show, Mister. No, just kidding. I ain't going down with that ship. Mm-hmm. I'm just laughing over here. All right, you guys, you have a wonderful day. We will see you tomorrow. Bye.